Okay, hi. Welcome to Gaming as Women on Indie Plus. You are watching, our topic today is speed bumps and creativity. And the things that we do to overcome them. So, when we're designing games and role-playing games in particular, like what we do to overcome those speed bumps when we hit those walls in creativity. And there's lots of things that can kind of prevent you from your flow, your creative flow when you're creating stuff. It could be, your cat's being really cute, or you just kind of want to marathon community, which I'm totally guilty of recently. But, also practical stuff like your process and how it works and the different things that you might have to, like doing research or actually sitting down in front of the computer and typing, stuff like that. So, my name is Kira McGran. And I'm a blogger at Gaming as Women, and I'm joined here by my fellow blogger, Anna Kreider. We're going to introduce ourselves in a second, actually. I forgot that we have to mention that meets the Indie Plus guidelines. So you can read about those on the Indie Plus page. Basically, you might hear some mature content or words. So you might hear a curse or something like that. I forget the official tagline. Sorry, Indie Plus people. But you can read about those guidelines on the Indie Plus page. So Anna Kreider, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. My name is Anna Kreider. I'm a blogger and game designer. My blog is Go Make Me a Sandwich. And my game website is Peach Pants Press. I've written several role-playing games, working on developing several more. It's me.
Cool. Awesome. What are you working on right now?
So I have I think I have 5 games that I'm currently, and actually it's funny, this is a big part of how I get past creative roadblocks is I write until I hit a roadblock, and then I switch to a different game, and that's how I wound up with 5. So I've got one called Propel on the Door to Heaven, which is basically Stargate with serial numbers filed off. I've got one that's basically about Death Knights. I've got one, it's a hack of my own game, Thou Art But a Warrior, called The Starlit Kingdom. I've got another game called Malignant. I may or may not be writing a superheroes game with a friend, so yeah, it's quite a few.
That's an impressive list, yeah. But I do the same thing. I understand, like having 5 or 6 things to kind of bounce back and forth between. I think that's something that I learned in art school, like when I went to art college for my BFA. Like the more projects you kind of have bouncing around in your head, the easier it is. Like if you're like, I'm stuck on this one, I can move to this other one and work on that for a little while I think about that other problem.
Yeah, and that's definitely my sweet spot tends to be about 3 or 4. I don't actually enjoy having 5. That's a few too many, but yeah, it definitely, like, I tend to work in fits and spurts where I'll work on one thing as like the thing for maybe 2 weeks, and then I just get to this point where there's this problem, and I'm like, oh, like, what do I do about this? Or the other thing is, I hate writing rules. So I will have like this like outline of like, here's how like the bits and pieces actually work, but that when it comes to actually like writing the rules of like, here's how you make it go, I hate doing that, so I'll avoid doing that by working on something else.
Oh my god, I do the same exact thing. I'll write out like, okay, this is how the game is supposed to work. I'll like have my Google Doc or whatever, and at the top it'll be like a bunch of themes and character ideas and stuff like that. And then I'll hit the block where it's like, okay, this is how the game mechanics actually function. And that will be blank until like the absolute last minute. and until like the deadline is hitting, right? And actually that's so essential. Like really the only thing that pushes me to finish those documents and finish those rule sets is like when I have a set deadline for myself, or someone else has put a deadline on me, like, you need to get this done by this day. I'm like, cool. And then, often like the weekend before or whatever is when I actually start cracking down on those hard parts that I didn't want to work on before.
Yeah, deadlines are really helpful. I find I also like, for me, I just like, I get to a point where I'm just like, oh, I'm sick of you. I want to just get you out the door and not have you be a thing. So that'll, like sometimes I'll just kind of get to a point where I'm just like, okay, I just got to knuckle down and finish this thing so that I can stop thinking about it.
Yeah, do you actually like get tired of it where you're just like, okay, I'm kind of done with you. Like, I just want you to be done. I never want to look at you again. I'm glad that I'm done with this creative thought in my brain. Like, I've worked it to death. Like, I've spent like 100 hours on this thing, and like, I just can't think about it anymore.
Yeah, for sure. It's funny that I'm hacking the Art But a Warrior because I didn't play it for like 3 years because I got so tired of it from all the play testing that I did when I published it. So so now like I actually ran out of the hack of the hack, and then I was like, oh, like I forgot like how good this is. Um,
It's kind of like a gift to yourself sometimes, right? Like when you write something and then you're like, oh, this sucks. And then you go back a little bit later and you're like, this is actually kind of good.
yeah. Yeah, and like that is, I think you kind of have to go through that stage in order to get anything like really polished. Like if you haven't gotten to the point where you're like, I hate this, this is garbage, I'm garbage, like I don't think it's done yet. But it's definitely challenging getting like knowing that that's going to be part of it and still finding a way to get through that without just kind of, tossing it to the side.
Yeah, no, that's really true. Like I find, and you're an artist too, right? Like you do
Yeah.
illustration and you have like an art and design background, right? Did you also go to
Yeah.
art school? Cool.
Well, not like art school. I have a Bachelor of Fine Arts, but I went to just a traditional university, not like
Cool.
not like yeah, not
Yeah,
like a
not like
super
a
fancy art school, but yeah.
yeah, yeah. I mean, what's the difference? But you have your BFA. It's awesome. So
Yes.
you learned a lot of the design principles, which I think sometimes like gives us a little bit of an advantage when we're talking about game design, because I feel like I see a lot more parallels between game design than I do and art, like visual arts, than I do like game design and writing or literature. There's like a lot of writing involved. Like pretty much the medium you're working in game design is writing. It's not like a visual medium necessarily, but like the creative process for game design like has those beats that I find that I have like when I'm making my jewelry. Like, go through these iterations of sketches, pick out the one that you think is best or the three you think is best. Go ask 10 people what they think about it. Like, then go back and redesign and like refine and like, maybe you don't like it as much, but you need to have that kind of support system and feedback system in place
Sure.
to kind of get that validation and feedback. Like I think that's such an essential part actually of creating and doing game design in general is that feedback, right? Because like when you hate something, you can ask someone and they'll be like, no, it's really good and this is why. I don't know. Do you find that useful? Like sometimes when I'm really down about something, if I hear like it's really good, like I'm just like, yeah, I'm jazzed about it again. I don't know. It's really simple, but effective.
Yeah, it's interesting that game design is a very iterative process, and yeah, like I find definitely when I'm kind of in the stage of like fleshing out a game, I'll dump stuff up on Google Plus just to be like, hey, like here's a nugget of what I'm working on, and just having other people be like, oh, that's like really exciting or whatever, helps give me motivation to keep going, which is useful. But
Yeah.
I think also a lot of the similarities between, having that visual arts background, how that helps with game design is a lot of it is, so like there's just a lot of like work and like tedious parts where it's just like, ah, I have to write the rules now. Like, this isn't the fun part. I don't want to do this part. But it's all about knowing how to create the environment where you know that you can be creative, right? So, like when I was in art school and like just the sheer volume of art that I had to make to get through art school, it wasn't, very often it wasn't like it'd be like, yay, this assignment is really fun. It's like, oh my God, I have like 20 hours to go on this assignment. Like, this is the worst. So it's about learning what you need in an environment to be creative, whether that's music or not music, or, and like setting up that space for yourself so you're not sabotaging yourself before you start.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. It's kind of like a ritual, right? Like when I sit down to do work, like ahead of time, I'll think, okay, what kind of music is going to put me in the mindset to do this? Like recently, I've been working on my Mobilize LARP, and that's about queer women in World War II in the motor pools, like working on cars, like the mechanics, basically.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like, I put together a playlist on YouTube of like World War II music by women and like imagined what they'd be listening to in the garage, and that got me into the mindset of, okay, I'm like writing this thing. And I don't know, music for me is really helpful when I'm being creative. Like different music does different things for me. I'll usually put something on that's like a little more energetic or trancy when I'm making jewelry, for instance, because that's just kind of like tedious paint work as opposed to like deep brain work.
Yeah.
So, yeah, creating that space is super important. That's true. Do you like what are you working on right now that you feel like what's a speed bump that you've had in a creative project recently that was like, I hit this wall?
So my day job has two very distinct seasons. There's the slow season and the busy season. And a lot of the times during the slow season, I'll have tons of stuff that I'm working on, and more of the obstacles that I run into there is it'll be like an actual design problem. Like, oh man, like this is a problem that I'm not sure how to solve. And usually I just kind of put it aside and think about it for a while. Right now, the big problem I'm running into is we're in the absolute crazy nutso season. And so like I get home and I find that I want to be creative, but like I just don't have the mental energy. And so that's something I'm really struggling with. I'm finding that I have to like schedule time to sit at my computer and be like, no, I don't feel like it, but I'm like, shit's got to get done. So I guess just kind of having the discipline to say, I'm gonna sit down and I'm gonna and thankfully, like a lot of my projects are at the stage where it's just a matter of like I just got to plug away at writing them. Like the design challenges have been solved. I just have to turn it into something that's useful to other people, I guess.
Yeah, that's hard to do though. Like it's funny that you talk about like creating that design space as a speed bump in creativity, because like it's not like, oh, I had problems with these dice rules. It's like, no, I had trouble setting aside space for myself to work and like being in the headspace to work, especially when it's a lot of tedious work to do and it's not like the fun, setting story, character, whatever thing. It's like the tedious, I have to write out these instructions part of the game, like, in the hour that I have available in between my family and my job.
Yeah.
And all of the other stuff that I have to do. Yeah, that can be hard to motivate yourself.
Yeah, it's tough, and I'm not doing as well with it as I'd like right now. It helps knowing that it's a temporary thing and I will eventually get back to it, but yeah, I mean, for people who have young families or even just a lot of, their job occupies a lot of their attention, I find, the things that it's really hard for me to balance the things that kind of recharge me enough to be able to be creative and then just like having time to sit down and plug away at doing the work.
Yeah. It's funny, like, I don't know if you watch Mad Men, but I haven't watched all of it yet, but I'm in the last season, and it's like halfway through the beginning of the last season, you see Don Draper, and he's like, I don't know, he's being rebellious because he's trying to get his spoilers. He's trying to get his job back, and he's like, I don't want to. I don't want to do all this work that got me the job in the first place. You know, I want to be a carousing, drinking, advertising guy that doesn't have to do very much and can get by on his words. And like sometimes I feel that way. I like feel that with that Don Draper moment. Because I'm like, do I really have to sit down and do all this work? This sucks. And like the key message of that one episode, like his friend's like, Don, you just gotta sit down and do the work. Just sit in front of your typewriter and knock it out. You gotta sit there for 12 hours. Just do it. And that's like such an essential part of design, is actually just sitting down and doing it.
Yeah. Yeah, and I don't know. I mean, I feel like we're kind of making design sound like not fun.
Yeah.
But I mean, the thing is, it's super gratifying when you get through that space and you get to where you have like even a semi-decent, like a semi-finished product. Like I recently ran a playtest of the Starlit Kingdom, and that was when that was actually really helpful for me because I was like, oh my god, this is like so good. Like it does exactly what it says on the tin, which I was pretty sure it would, but then like having that experience of being at the table was very energizing. So yeah, I mean, it's motivating to get through some of the more unfun parts, because now I have to kind of I have to make revisions from the playtest, and I'm gonna have to start, dealing with turning it into a finished thing. But yeah, I guess finding ways to be excited about the unfun parts is important, because if you don't get through it, then you're just gonna have like a pile of mostly finished games, and then they never get out there, and that's kind of sad.
Yeah. Well, and I find over time it becomes easier to power through those things, because I think that most of the time it's not necessarily that it's tedious or unfun. It's just that I'm not that good at it yet. And so like sometimes I'll slow down because like I have like this anxiety of, am I doing the right thing? Or like I just can't write that quickly yet, because like I've designed a few things, but I'm not like I haven't been designing for as many years as I have been making art, for example. So I can like knock out some jewelry pieces. I know how long it's going to take me. I know what my skill level is. I know, I can quote people on the amount of work I'm going to have to do. But like game design, I'm not just quite there yet. So I still kind of struggle, like as a beginning designer, on those feels like kind of hit me, in a way that I don't expect them to. And sometimes it takes me longer to get through the work part because of that.
Yeah. Yeah, it's tough. But I mean, thankfully, game design is an iterative process, and so I take great comfort in that. Even if I feel terrible about where something is at now, it's not. It's very different from the kind of writing that I do for my blog, where I get it reasonably polished and I put it up and then I stop thinking about it. It's very much like, if you don't like it, you just keep coming back to it and coming back to it and coming back to it. So I find it weirdly comforting in that, like, you can have a thing that you feel terrible about, but eventually you'll get it to something that's good and worth sharing.
Yeah, I mean, and all designers feel that way about their stuff. Like,
yeah,
for my day job, like I talk to high school students about their artwork, and they're always like, "I'm so intimidated by all this artwork I see around me. I'm just not that good." And I'm like, "Girl, you got this. Like, your stuff is amazing. Don't be so self-conscious." Because it's very personal, the things that we make, right? Like everything that we create is from us. And we always have these doubts. So I think that know that you're not alone when you're designing. You're gonna hit those speed bumps, and people are there to help you with those. Find ways to kind of overcome them, and the motivation is super important. Finding ways to trick yourself into motivation with like deadlines, or like creating your space, or rewards are great too, right?
Yeah.
Like sometimes I'm like, okay, if I get to this point, I can like go hang out with my friends tonight or whatever. That's a silly one. I'd hang out with my friends anyway, but like I can have some ice cream.
Yeah, I've done that one.
Yeah, just like small things. You can like hack your brain into getting stuff done.
Yeah. Um, something that I'll mention because I know that Philomena is a big fan of it is what's it called? There's a program called I think Write or Die, um, where I'm not exactly clear on how it works, but you have to basically it's a thing where you set a goal and you just have to keep writing, and it tricks your brain into not letting you stop. I'm not sure. I'm not doing it justice, but um, I know that Philomena says she gets a lot of work done using that, so maybe something for people watching to check out. Um,
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, Philomena was supposed to join us tonight, but has or this morning. It's tonight in Japan for her, where she is, but she wasn't able to make it. So yeah, thank you for mentioning that. She also had mentioned that one thing that she does is like when her creativity is high, or her inspiration for something is high, she'll like take a second and write everything down, like write out a brief outline, because she's like really excited about it in that minute. And then like you can just put it down and then come back to it later, and then you'll kind of have that as like a gift to yourself in the future, where like you did kind of some like basic outline work about something while you're excited about it. I think that that's a really good trick too.
yeah, and I try to do that honestly. Also, I find a lot of the times my ideas for new games come at really inconvenient times. So I kind of make them leave me alone for a little while by just, I mean, yeah, like exactly that. Write down everything I can think of about it, um, and maybe like a 2-page Google Doc, and then I can come back to it later when I have time to expand upon it. But yeah, having that sort of detailed outline is, I think, super important because later, if you don't write all that stuff down, you can kind of forget what the shape of the thing was, unless you are really specific. So, yeah, I'm a big fan of
Yeah,
working that way.
yeah. So when I do stuff like that, like I do that a lot actually as like a format thing. Like when I'm brainstorming ideas, like I'll just like have Google Docs are your friend, by the way. If you don't use Google Docs,
Google Docs are so
they're
great.
excellent. Yeah, they're you can access them from mostly anywhere. You can share them with people. They're awesome to work in. Um, but what I'll do is I'll just do like a brain dump. I'll just be like, these are all the things that I think might be associated with this thing that I want to do. Like I'm designing a witch game right now with a bunch of people. It's different from the witch game that's already been kickstarted, but there's billions of witch games, I guess.
Yeah.
Witches are cool. So what I do is I kind of create like a style sheet. Like if I was doing like a collage, a visual collage, I do like a word collage of like maybe this game is kind of like if you took this Grimes video, that I really like, or what are the colors or sounds that are associated with this game, or what types of people do I think would play this game, or what types of things do I think you could do in this game, just kind of like everything that's associated with it, so that I kind of have that as like an inspiration sheet in the future, and I can go back, because I might not remember all those random things, and then I can kind of go back and look at those ideas that I had, a week ago, and maybe not all of them are good or successful, but I can pull out the ones
Yeah.
that are. I find that really useful. So, yeah. We're almost out of time. We've got about 5 minutes left. You mentioned Google Docs. What are some other like programs or media that you use to kind of help you get around those speed bumps? Because I find sometimes when I work in different media, that helps.
Um, it's funny when I first started working out in game design, I found that I needed pencil and paper, but I made a conscious effort of training myself away from that because, um, especially since I've especially since I've had my daughter and I now live with a toddler, I find that I have to be prepared to be able to write wherever I happen to be, which is yeah Google Docs. So I anymore I used to work across I used to kind of split between writing at the computer and then like sitting down and writing things out longhand, but anymore, just because of practical realities, I almost 100% just me at a computer or my tablet or wherever. So
Cool.
yeah.
Do you use Word or do you just stay in Google Docs?
Always Google Docs. Again, because
Wow.
I don't always know where I'm going to be. So as long as I
Yeah.
have an internet connection, and also I'm really bad for losing stuff. So that's the other reason I don't like writing things out anymore, because I've actually had that happen where I've been like, oh, like, okay, I've like gotten in the zone and I've like written up this thing and I've solved all these design problems, and then I totally lose the piece of paper that was on, and then it's really tragic. So I'm a
Yeah.
big
I've
fan of that.
definitely done that before.
Yeah.
Yeah, with like 10 sketchbooks or whatever, and then I'm like, where's the one sketchbook with the Catwoman on the front? I can't find it. That had all my ideas. No, that's definitely a thing. I've actually been using, I got this Hobonichi planner, which is like this Japanese day planner, um, which is really excellent. I can kind of like write a lot of ideas in there if I'm writing things down like over lunch. Like I find taking a break from looking at the screen and then like going and sitting down at a table and like writing stuff out, pretty useful. And then I also use my email. So like I'll email myself links. I'll like start like an email thread to myself regarding the game. So like I have an email thread to myself with like 50 emails to myself for like my mobilized game, which is, I don't know, kind of delightful to like I'm sending emails to myself, but
I've done
also kind
that.
of hard to keep track of.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've also had a couple times where I've had to go back into like a Google chat and kind of like um, pick notes out of it, because I wind up, just kind of talking off the cuff about like a particular design problem with someone on Google chat. And then later I'm like, oh, I should really make sure I don't lose that. But then I have to go back and like find that in my Google chat. So that's always kind of fun too.
Yeah, that's sometimes a super great thing, though. I'm going to wrap up with that idea, actually. It's bouncing your ideas off of people. If you're stuck, usually talking it out is like so helpful to me. Like that was kind of in the feedback realm that we were talking about earlier, but we didn't really get into it too much. Like if you're stuck on something, like asking 10 different people their opinion, or even if you don't have 10, like 3 or whatever, like I'll talk to my boyfriend. He's great. Jeremy's great about like bouncing ideas off of something when I'm having trouble. He'll be like, "Oh, did you think about this?" or ask me lots of questions that kind of help me work out the idea. And sometimes I'll do that in public too, like on G Plus, and be like, "Hey, I'm having this design issue. Has anybody else had this issue before?" And then usually that can be super helpful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
G Plus is a great place for getting feedback. I'm a big fan because there's a lot of really smart. I think there's just a lot of really smart people, and I find a lot of the times they have a way of helping me break through. Either helping me solve a problem, or sometimes I'll have a solution, but then I'll be like, "No, that's dumb." But then I throw it out to G Plus, and they're like, "No, that's actually a good solution." So
Yeah, then that's nice and validating, and also like a genuine opinion, or a genuine feedback. Like as far as like yeah, it's not just like a bias. Like I like you, so I'm agreeing with you. It's more
yeah,
like, no, I like your idea. That's cool, and this is why. Like that's cool to hear too.
yes,
Yeah. So G Plus is great. Come to G Plus and join us and talk there.
I swear I'm not being paid to endorse Google. I just really like their products.
I know, right? Yeah,
Yeah.
we're using a lot. We're talking about Google a lot. Cool. All right. Well, I think wow, we're exactly on the half-hour mark. Good job, us.
Well,
So, any final thoughts? Anything you want to kind of wrap up with?
um, I mean, I guess the big one is just creativity isn't always it's not always fun, and it's actually kind of liberating once you accept that, because if you can get through the not fun parts, the end result is so rewarding. But I think a lot of times people have this expectation that creativity is always going to be like, oh, this is the best, and it's like, but sometimes being creative is just sitting down and doing work. So yeah.
Excellently put. Yeah. So creativity is awesome, but also work. Cool. So so if you have any more questions for us, we would love to answer them for you. At Gaming as Women, which is our blog online. You can send like submissions in there. You can hit us up on Indie Plus too if you want to comment like on this video afterwards, or just in Google Plus in general. You can find us on there under our names.
Yep.
I think we both love talking about creativity and making stuff and process. So
For sure.
be happy to engage further. So thank you so much for watching. This is Gaming as Women on Indie Plus, and I hope to see you for our next video. So long.